Ayara First of Locthwain versus Morophon the Boundless, Sidisi Brood Tyrant, and Sidisi Brood Tyrant. That's actually, yeah, that's a pretty bad hand, so we'll get rid and hope that we've got lands in the new hand. Yeah, that's not superb either, although we've got a third mana even if we don't get into a land, so yeah, we will definitely go for that. Very much like the Phyrexian Arena as well. Alright, a Witch's Cottage. Do we want a turn 1 playing Viscera Seer? Or do we want to get the tap land out of the way? We can go in for Arcane Signet next turn and then go... Yeah, let's go in for the Viscera Seer here. If we want to sacrifice our own Viscera Seer to the Scry effect to try and get into another land, then we can grab it back with the Witch's Cottage. Satyr Wayfinder for the Sidisi, already starting to load up the graveyard. They've gotten rid of a Reanimate, an Obnixilis Reignited, and a land. That's some good stuff for them to get rid of from our perspective, but I'm sure they wanted some creatures in there. The second Sidisi player just passing the turn and going over to Morophon, who is on their way to setting up their 5 colours. An Imperial Seal, so they've now got a card on top that they've tutored for. This is just a sorcery speed vampiric tutor basically. We get into Kalitas. Let's go Phyrexian Tower. We could actually sacrifice the Viscera Seer to Phyrexian Tower and go for Phyrexian Arena, couldn't we? Yeah, I'm actually going to go for that. I don't like getting rid of a sack outlet, but I think the faster we go here, the better. A Nissa Vastwood Seer coming down for Sidisi number 1. And they've also gotten a Mana Crypt into play. And then just tapping out and passing the turn. Compulsion. 2 discard and draw. And then 2 sacrifice Compulsion to draw a card. So that is pretty much just a discard outlet for our opponent. Then some Ramping Morophon with 3 visits. I don't know if that's what they tutored for with the Imperial Seal. May well be if they weren't liking what they were drawing into. Speaking of drawing, we will draw an additional card with our Phyrexian Arena. We do not get into another land, so now is the time to go for the Witch's Cottage. Oh, and the Witch's Cottage... Oh, it has to enter untapped in order to get our Viscera Seer back. I thought we were going to have this enter and trigger the Viscera Seer back on top of our library, but apparently not. Not to worry. We'll just have to hope that we get into another sack outlet. Play out our Arcane Signet and pass over. Sidisi Brood Tyrant coming in. And milling some more stuff. There's a Kiora. And Expropriate, that's good to get rid of. Another land. Yeah, so they're not having the best of luck filling their graveyard with creatures. Although that might not be the aim of the deck. They might have that... What's that sorcery that brings legendaries out of the graveyard? I can't remember. Taking 1 in at us, 2 in at the other Sidisi player. A Carrionet from the second Sidisi, that's a skeleton. And for 4 mana you can exile it. And a target creature, unless the creature's controller pays 2. You can only do that if this is in your graveyard though. So they're just going to use it as a chump blocker and then it can be removal later on. Might be worth getting down our Kalitas if little tricks like that are going to occur. Noteworthy as well that the Sidisi does not have green mana yet. Morophon has just tapped out for an Everflowing Chalice, which will now tap for 2 mana. And we are still not drawing into any lands. I think we're going to have to go for the Sign in Blood here. Because if we need to do anything, it's make mana. Well, doesn't get much more unlucky than that, does it? We'll play out the Reassembling Skeleton because it's pretty much the only thing we can do. And then, if needs be, we'll have to go for Costly Plunder next turn. But we just drew 4 cards and not a single land was on top. Grisly Salvage for even more self-mill. Let's see if they got any creatures this time. Oh, there's another Planeswalker. I think they're trying to reanimate all their Planeswalkers, a Time Spiral as well, so they don't necessarily want to keep all their cards in the graveyard. That's curious. Yeah, Grisly Salvage, Cyclonic Rift's gotten rid of as well. We'll see some more mill from our opponent when Sidisi swings in, and it is coming in at us. They've got Putrefy and a couple of lands that time. And actually, now that I think about it, the Mass Reanimation spell, I think it's for legendary permanents, and I think it's black and white, actually. So maybe our opponent, in fact, isn't going for reanimating the Planeswalkers. I'd be curious to see how this game plays out. Alright, going for Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. Maybe they can just return permanents from graveyard to hand. And they're just using Sidisi as a type of card draw. Jace ticking up there for scry 1 and draw. Compulsion, discard and draw. They have discarded Whip of Erebos. And then discarding to draw again. And getting rid of a creature. Kedirect Leviathan. And I don't think they dropped a land there. It is their turn 5. So they're not the only ones being unlucky with the land drops. Dragonlord Silumgar coming down. That will be able to steal something. Might go for our opponent's commander. Or even the Jace. Probably goes after the Jace, doesn't it? No, they're taking the commander away from our opponent. I suppose next turn they can start swinging in at Jace. Or they can force Jace to tick down to return Silumgar back to the hand. Yeah, I think I would have taken the Planeswalker there, personally. Now, let's see if we can draw into a land here. Morophon didn't get into one either. Alright, eventually draw into a land. That's really good. We've got... Well, we'll play the only land that's in hand. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 mana if we want it. I say we just go for our Kalitas here. And then if either of the Sidisi players start trying to do something crazy with their graveyards, then we can keep them from doing that. Hold back the reassembling skeleton. And we'll hold up Costly Plunder as well. I don't imagine we're going to sacrifice any of our creatures, but you never know, someone might board wipe. And the Jace is ticking down to return Sidisi to its owner's hand. Yeah, that's curious. This only gains control of a creature or planeswalker for as long as you control it, so our opponent could bounce that, send Sidisi straight over to their side of the field, and force our opponent to recast Silumgar, but instead putting Sidisi into their hand. Maybe they're desperate to recast her for the mill. They've gotten down a Temple of the False God as well, by the way. In comes that Sidisi again. Now, Kalitas only exiles cards when they die, I think. Creatures opponents control get exiled when they die, and you get a zombie token, yeah, so they have to be on the field in order to die. So if our opponent mills a creature, it won't exile it. Pulse of Marasa. Return a target creature or land from a graveyard to its owner's hand, and gain 6 life. That's a pretty good 3 mana instant. They are grabbing back the Progenitor Mimic, which is quite frightening. Sidisi still going for the compulsion activations, and they've got Necrotic Ooze, which is a combo piece, and then discarding Ramunap as well. They are really not getting into their lands, not having any luck at all here. So it looks like they are just passing without making a land for the second turn in a row. Yeah, I think I use a Necrotic Ooze combo in Lazav the Multifarious. I'm sure I've used it in a deck anyway, I can't remember now. Dragonlord Kolaghan, that is a 6/5 flying haste. Other creatures have haste that you control whenever an opponent casts a creature or planeswalker with the same name as a card in their graveyard. Now that's not really relevant in this format, is it? But it's obvious that Morophon has gone for Dragon Tribal here. Now they should swing in at this Sidisi player, but let's see where it goes. Just bringing in the Rakdos Dragon to take down Jace, leaving back the Dragonlord Silumgar as a blocker. We are not going to go for a Costly Plunder here, we'll just draw the cards with Phyrexian Arena. Probably want to get down our commander soon. Okay, Nykthos. That's actually quite a bit of mana, isn't it? We tap down 3 pieces of mana in order to get 5 back. Yeah, that sounds good. So if we go for our commander first, that'll be even more devotion to black. We've gotten into an Ashnod's Altar as well, which is really good. Ayara enters, and whenever she sees a black creature enter, including herself, she drains 1. Now let's go for Dictate of Erebos. I like to surprise my opponents with this typically, but if we're going to tap our mana in a funny way with the Nykthos, then we can't go for Ashnod's Altar and the Dictate of Erebos on someone else's turn. So we'll just do it now. Just hold back our Kalitas as a Rattlesnake effect here. And we've also got the Ashnod's Altar and Dictate of Erebos combination going on, so we could have our opponent sack their entire board near enough, thanks to Reassembling Skeleton coming out of the graveyard. It's not infinite because it takes a black mana, but we've got plenty of black mana now. Oh, and the Nissa is flipping over, that's noteworthy. See if they go for the card draw or for the 4/4 token. They are going for the plus ability and they get into a forest. 6 cards in hand and plenty of mana. It's noteworthy as well that whenever our opponents sacrifice a creature to the Dictate of Erebos, Kalitas will see each of those. And we'll get 3 zombies in this case, which will be really good with our commander. Okay, Villainous Wealth. That is X8 on us. Now, I don't know whether to sacrifice something in response or not here. I don't really know what our opponent can get into. Yeah, we'll just let it happen. Alright, there's an Expedition map. They've got a sack outlet in Phyrexian Altar. Priest of Gix will get them some mana, or Necropotence as well. Demonic Tutor, a Reanimate. What can they reanimate? Anything or nothing? Oh, Reanimate goes on other people's creatures, doesn't it? So, when this enters the battlefield, return all other non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Yeah, that is a really good Villainous Wealth from our opponent. Yeah, Reanimate onto this thing is going to slow us right down. Let's go for Ashnod's Altar now then. We'll go Reassembling Skeleton to trigger the Dictate of Erebos. Everyone has to sacrifice a creature here, and that will get us into some zombies, which will trigger the Ayara. And then we'll sacrifice one of the zombies that Kalitas has just made. And we'll get rid of a couple more creatures, which will go into exile. Now, this won't work on our opponent's commander, but we can get rid of our opponent's commander anyway, maybe. We don't have any black mana for that. Yeah, we'll just leave it for now and wait for the Kedorect to come into play. So it will come into play with Reanimate here. Now let's sacrifice a zombie and do the same again. Force our opponent to exile a creature. They sacrifice their commander, so that doesn't trigger the Kalitas. Luckily we've got enough zombies to get rid of our opponent's blue creature. And unfortunately we don't have any black mana to replay the Dictate of Erebos. That gets rid of Morophon. They don't like having their dragons messed with, apparently. Everything gets bounced here. And then Expedition map, Phyrexian Altar and our Priest of Gix come into play. They will be able to generate 4 mana here. They'll get 3 from this. 1 if they sacrifice it from Phyrexian Altar, and then they'll be able to go for something with Expedition map if they want to, because they'll have the mana to do so. They've got 8 cards in hand currently. And a Mana Crypt as well. They decide to sacrifice our Priest of Gix and go in for recasting the Nissa, which did get bounced back to their hand, and then tapping out and passing the turn. Curiously, they decided not to go for Expedition map, although they have a full grip of 7, don't they, so they mustn't want to discard anything, which might mean that they don't have any creatures in hand. Let's see if this Sidisi player ends up dropping a land or not. Well, there we go. They finally got an into green. Comes in tapped, unfortunately. Then they play out their compulsion again, and I dare say they're going to end up discarding for card draw. Yep, they've gotten rid of a Stinkweed Imp. They'll be able to start filling up their graveyard in no time with Dredge. Noteworthy as well that Sidisi decided not to cast the Necropotence, so that is just exiled. That does keep them from drawing cards, so makes sense that they would do that. Now, how much mana do we have? Not much, I don't think. We'll drop a Signet first of all. And we'll just replay the Kalitas, I think. Then we're going to have to discard a bunch of cards here. Get rid of Bontu's Monument. Bloodghast we can easily get out of the graveyard. God Eternal Bontu I don't think is going to be doing anything for us this game. And one more. We'll just go for Yeah, we'll go for the costly plunder as well. A damnation just to get rid of our Kalitas. Well, it's good to get it out of our opponent's hand. Followed by Kiora, Master of the Depths. And Nissa creating a 4/4 elemental creature. Then Kiora untapping the Temple of the False God. Hedron Crab, the second Sidisi, might actually come into play here. Yeah, finally starting to get their self-mill on the go. They managed to mill a creature because they got into a zombie. It was a Brawn. They don't control a forest, I don't think. No, they don't control a forest yet, so their creatures do not have trample. They make another land in Shizo and make another zombie because they milled a Genesis. Alright, we've got an Endrick Sar. How much mana can we make this turn? We play our commander. We tap both of these down, that'll be 3 mana. Yeah, we don't have enough devotion. It would be good if we could have kept that Kalitas in play last turn. I think trying to set something up with Endrick Sar is the way to go here. So we'll play Blood-Soaked Champion first of all. And we could have gotten into a Thrall token actually, I did that the wrong way around, so I just wanted to make sure I had enough black mana to cast things. But definitely should have gone for Endrick Sar and then the Blood-Soaked Champion. We would have had a Thrall token to block with. Now, if the board state stands as it does now, we could actually go in for our commander next turn, hopefully drop a land, although who knows if we'll draw a land. And then we could sacrifice a Thrall to the Phyrexian Tower. If I'm working it all out right, I think we can get our commander out and a Plague Vermin next turn if we get into a land. And because we've got more life than our opponent, although we might not have more life than our opponent if we have a Shire coming in at us. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen here. But anyway, if we have more life than our opponent in this deck, then we can pay pretty much all but one of our life into this and then instantly regain it and drain all of our opponents for that amount with our commander. So we'll just have to see what our opponent goes for here. I imagine they're absolutely swinging in at us, because it seems to be us that they are worried about. Got 4 cards in hand now, a whole bunch of mana. They are refusing to crack this expedition map for some reason. It's been a few turns. They actually left mana untapped last turn. Ticking up the Kiora, I think they just untapped our opponent's Shizo for some reason there as well. Anyway, deciding not to swing in, which is really good. Hopefully, this Sidisi player will not swing in at us either. Their Genesis triggers at the beginning of their upkeep, so they have pointed that at the Stinkweed Imp. Now, that's not the way you want to get Stinkweed Imp out of the graveyard, but they might not pay for it anyway. Yes, they did use the Dredge from Stinkweed Imp there, and milled another creature to get a zombie. This time it was a Balthor, the Defiled. Now they're getting their own Satyr Wayfinder. And again, another creature goes in the bin. What was it this time? A Pharika, God of Affliction. Then some more self-mill from the Hedron Crab from, I think it was, a Lonely Sandbar that entered. Although that enters tapped, so yeah. Oh, it must have been this Swamp, I think, that came in. Again, managing to hit a creature, having better luck than the other Sidisi player. A Shriekmaw I just saw, that's what went in. Now, I imagine these zombies might swing in at us because they're so disposable, and we are the player that is most likely to not block. Just Sidisi coming in though, so even more mill. All they needed was some green mana, and they are really off to the races here. Haven't seen a life from the Loam yet though. Shriekmaw was the last one. Now it is a Doom Whisperer. They've also got Drownyard Temple in the bin as well, so they can get that out whenever they like. The Sidisi is coming in at us. We are still going to have more life than our opponents, just barely. So if we get into a land, then we can still go in for our line of play. Then a Mesmeric Orb. So we are going to mill a lot here. That is 6 mills. Well, Mana Crypt is as good as a land. Did we mill anything interesting? Thornbite Staff, part of a combo, as are most things in this deck. Read the Bones. Slingang Lieutenant. That's Slingang Lieutenant. Say that 3 times fast. Yeah, Chittering Witch, just stuff that enters with tokens, basically. Alright, let's see if we can combo off here. Noteworthy that Sidisi has left up counter magic. I don't know how often the Sultai Sidisi players use counter magic, but yeah. Well, we'll go for it anyway, I think. First, get down our Ayara. That will trigger the Endrick Tsar. Unfortunately, we won't gain life yet because our commander is not yet in play. She will gain us a life when she enters herself, though. So that actually would have put us closer to having more life than our opponents anyway. Now then. If we tap this down for black mana, that gives us 5. We could actually go for Ashnod's Altar instead, couldn't we? And then sack the Thralls, and yeah, we might as well progress our board state some here. So yeah, we'll do that. We need to keep Thralls out of play anyway. And we'll see if that player has a counter spell. You would think they'd want to use it on Ashnod's Altar, but they do not. So we'll sack a Thrall. And another one. And we need 6 colourless mana here. Then we'll go Plague Vermin. And this, for anyone who doesn't know, and I imagine you don't, because I've never seen this card before Ayara was released. Starting with you, each player may pay any amount of life. Repeat this process until no one does, and then each player creates a 1/1 black token for each 1 life that they paid. As long as we can keep our commander in play, we'll instantly gain back the life that we pay in. We'll just put in 31 life here because that's the highest life total of our opponents. But the noteworthy thing about this as well is that your opponents can't let you pay life and then go for like a lightning bolt before it resolves or anything like that. So it's actually a more safe card than you would think. So as you can see, we have gone down to 3 here. And that is 31 rats that we get into play. So we will always yield to all of these Ayara triggers. I'll try to if Modo will allow it. And with each of these Ayara triggers, our opponents will lose a life, will gain a life. And like I said, because we looked at the highest life total, which was 31 at the time, we got 31 rats. We drained each of our opponents for 31. And obviously go up 31 life there. We were at 3, now we're at 34. And that is one of the combos that you can get going with Ayara First of Locthwain. Name of that card is Plague of Vermin. And like I said, as long as it doesn't get countered, it's actually a pretty easy way to win against your opponents. The only thing is you need to keep your life total higher than your opponents. But that's just if you want to win on the spot. What you could do, if you're just a little bit of life under your opponents, you could drain them most of the way. And then maybe even go in for that new drawbridge card that came out in Eldraine to give your rats haste. I don't know, there's all kinds of things you can do. We could sacrifice all of these with a Dictate of Erebos in play and force our opponent to sack their board. But yeah, it was looking pretty hairy for a while there. We had our board bounced and we weren't really getting into the mana that we wanted. But luckily managed to draw into that card, keep our commander in play. And yet again, Ashnod's Altar just showing how valuable a card it is in a deck like this. Absolutely something that you should point spot removal at if you ever see it at your table. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this Ayara video. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.